Welcome to AMAGUGU, the platform celebrating black business excellence in South Africa. The Ntintili and Joe Motsogi's upcoming lecture at the Tshwane University of Technology, Pretoria, on the 1st of October 2024.
We're incarcerated, and it gives you the start of the history of South Africa. Then you can ascend the tallest building in Africa, Carlton Center of top of Africa, which will give you 360 degrees view of Johannesburg. And that you'll see very scenic Johannesburg with abundance of trees that line the streets of Johannesburg.
Join me, Lwazi Kamanqele, as I engage with Septi Bukula, a visionary CEO of Rendzo Network, who brought the first International Small Business Congress to Africa. Mr. Bukula, thank you so much, sir, for having us here at your very lovely offices on this Heritage Day. Sir, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, and happy Heritage Day.
Thank you so much. Without wasting too much time, the purpose of our conversation today is the history of South African business.
Well, I can obviously speak only about black business, to be specific. And I think that, I could say that we've come a long way in terms of the growth and expansion of black business. Helped, of course, by the democracy era government policies like the Black Economic Empowerment frameworks and other frameworks which have made it easier to start and run a business in South Africa. As we know, of course, prior to the democracy era, it was incredibly difficult for a black person, someone like you and me, to start a business. But thanks to democracy, there's been a number of policies and institutions that have been put in place that have kind of eased, the entry of the black majority into business and the possibilities of success. With the laws that were put in place before to directly hinder the creation and growth of black businesses largely having been removed. We can only be grateful for that as we celebrate 30 years of our democracy. And so as a result of that, we've seen an emergence of a large number of businesses, particularly small and medium enterprises. There have been, of course, with the help of our Black Economic Empowerment policies, an emergence of large businesses, black-owned businesses as well. But of course, I have to say that not all black businesses that exist owe their existence to the democracy era. Some of them quite clearly predate the democracy era and were established during the difficult days of apartheid. We are grateful that even those have survived and continued to grow. So today, as we celebrate Heritage Day, I think we can look back with gratitude for the changes that have taken place and the developments that have taken place. I must hasten, though, to say that there are still some challenges, particularly with reference to us seeing the growth of predominantly black-owned businesses. Yes, we've seen a number of SMEs being created, and what we really long to see is that the majority of those will grow from small to medium and ultimately to large enterprises. I think that the pace on that score is rather slower than we would have wished to see. And that is the case in tourism as well, which is the industry that our organization is, operates in. And this is a subject for discussion among us in the industry continually, to say it's well and good to see the number of small businesses that have come into existence. We celebrate that because not all will grow, not all desire to grow, but to the extent that there are some that desire to grow, we would like to see them grow, and we would like to see support measures being put in place to enable them to grow. So a positive story overall as we celebrate 30 years of our democracy, but certainly much work still to do.
Amusma is the proud supporter for ticketing at the Ntintili and Motsogi annual lecture.
Bring in the issue of tourism, and that automatically brings me to our next topic of discussion, that you are hosting a lecture at the Tshwane University of Technology, and that is dedicated to the pioneers of what I would call township tourism, Ntintili and Motsogi. Tell us a little bit more about that initiative.
Yeah, so really linking back to where I ended off, where our desire and our longing is to see the emergence of more growth-oriented businesses within the travel and tourism space, and the creation of an environment that enables that. Well, one of the things that we think is important is to really use the stories of our forebears, those who came before us in tourism, especially around the time of our transition to democracy, or early on in our democracy, who we really consider to have been pioneers in terms of not only championing a particular segment of our tourism sector, which is township tourism, which, by the way, has become one of the recognized segments and one of the most important and successful, lucrative segments of our industry. Not only having championed that, but having been pathfinders in terms of entry into tourism. Because remember, before our democratic transition, there were not really many black people undertaking tourism activities in the country, be it as tourists themselves, or even more so as entrepreneurs in tourism. And so while that has changed, we feel that we have a lot we can draw from those who were the early pioneers in order to inspire the current and future generations of tourism entrepreneurs. So the gentlemen that you've mentioned, Mr. Ntintili and Mr. Motsogi, are really those pioneers, as far as we are concerned, those pathfinders. These are the people who, during the times of apartheid, where there was a lot of fear, especially among the white community, to venture into townships as spaces where you can, go and enjoy yourself and mingle and interact. Of course, we know part of the apartheid policy of swart gevaar, black danger. You don't go there because they are black people. It's a dangerous place. And these guys at that time, counterintuitive as it was at the time, decided, no, we actually want to showcase the townships. And they said, we want to showcase the townships exactly as they are. The good, the bad, the ugly, the easy, and the difficult. But they were very clear in their minds that townships are places that are rich in culture, rich in life, generally, rich in vibrancy, and that this projection of townships as these dangerous places, as if they were war zones, was really robbing South Africa and visitors into South Africa of a particular experience. So they determined to open up that space. But I must hasten to say, of course, these were activists, political activists as well. So in opening up the township spaces, they were also wanting to show the world, during those struggle days, particularly the parts of the world that were sympathetic to South Africa, show them, what was happening in townships. In the process, they built very successful pioneering businesses, and that's why we felt it was important for us to celebrate them, honor their legacy, but also draw on that legacy to inspire the future, current and future generations of tourism entrepreneurs.
What made someone like Ntintili, what's some of the things that stood out for him that you say can be adopted by the young people today?
Well, I mean, it's actually interesting because yesterday I was speaking to the individual that we've invited to present the lecture on the 1st of October. And just listening to her, reflect about these two gentlemen, because she knew them quite well. And she really identified, commonalities, shall we say, between them. One of them is that these were people who were really passionate about, their space, which is the township space. This is the place they loved, they lived in, and this is the place they enjoyed, the vibrancy, the culture, the possibilities, and that kind of stuff. And so there was this intense passion and drive within them to showcase, the townships. And they kind of felt that, by excluding the townships from the tourism experience that South Africa has to offer, those who were visiting us as a country were really denied of a very rich cultural experience, a very dynamic experience. So they were really intentional about opening the townships as a new tourism product, and they did that successfully, as we can tell today. Township tourism has become very successful. So they were passionate about townships, they were passionate about their culture, they were passionate about people, but also they were entrepreneurial, right? Because, as I have said, it was very difficult, in those days for a black person to start up a business, particularly in tourism, which, like the rest of the economy, was really, controlled by non-black people. But to add to that difficulty, as I have said, the projection of townships as these spaces that are very dangerous to go to. So if you consider all of that, and the obstacles that put in the way, all of that put in the way, and how these two gentlemen, took that on, and as determined entrepreneurs, decided that they would not allow the obstacles to stand in their way, and that they would, do whatever it took in order to create the businesses that would showcase the townships. And when you listen to how they went about it in the beginning, you really see their entrepreneurial fervor come out. For instance, Ntintili started by, hiring taxis to take tourists into the townships. He didn't have vehicles of his own. Joe Motsogi started by volunteering for one of the tourism companies of the time, just to get the knowledge and the skill. He didn't have a background in tourism, unlike Ntintili, who had been trained in hospitality and was at the time working for the Soweto Hotel. So he had some knowledge of the industry because he was inside the industry. Joe Motsogi was a salesperson for the likes of South African breweries and these kinds of companies. He didn't have a tourism background. And yet he started one of the most successful companies at the time, which continues to exist and thrive to this day.
Is that JMT?
That's the company called JMT Tours and Safaris, which is now run by his wife and some of their children.
Very, very important. Looking forward to that. Tshwane University of Technology is obviously an institution of higher learning. What brings about putting together this lecture, and what are you hoping to achieve?
So when we conceptualized the lecture, recalling, of course, that one of the things that we do here, Rendzo Network is a network of tourism SMEs. So we really wanted to tap that legacy, to have a conversation among ourselves as tourism entrepreneurs, to say, what can we learn from these experiences of these forebears that can be of benefit to us as we build and grow our own businesses. And of course, as part of wanting to honor them, we thought about different things. Do we create an award, in their name. But ultimately, we decided, okay, these guys got enough awards during their time. They are not even around for us to give the awards anyway. That, the thing that we would like to do, which would really, in our view, do a much better job than an award in terms of getting the message, out and wide, would be a lecture. And so once we had that idea, we then decided, hey, it's a lecture after all. Wouldn't it be a good thing to partner with an academic institution? And so we then approached Tshwane University of Technology. And this is not the first time we're going to be working with Tshwane University of Technology. We've done some things before, and that is the context in which we decided to approach them. And indeed, when we approached them and presented the idea to them, we were actually pleasantly surprised by how excited, how welcoming they were of the idea. And we came to understand that a gentleman who heads the school of Department of Tourism there had personal knowledge. Actually, was a personal friend of Ntintili.
Wow!
So that just to us it was mind blowing because we didn't expect that. We just approached TUT. So we're very excited that TUT has agreed to partner with us. But of course, the wider context of that, as I say, we've worked with TUT before, but there's this ongoing conversation between TUT and ourselves about the importance of industry-academia collaboration.
Tell me more about that.
Yeah, because, look, of course the universities and the colleges, TVET colleges, are the ones that produce human resources for all of industry, including our own. And so we emphasize the importance of a close working relationship between all of industry and all of academia, so that the young people that come out of these universities are really well prepared for today's industry. So we think that dialogue, because it's a fast-changing industry, technology is playing a significant role. Tourism is not what it used to be. Both the traveler and the destinations are changing. So we feel as industry, and I say this also wearing my cap as a board member of the Tourism Business Council of South Africa. We feel as industry that it's very important that we have this close, engagements, close collaborations, collaboration with the academic world, so that they understand the direction of industry globally, and understand the needs of industry in South Africa, and therefore supply us with the human resources that we need to be able to compete in the environment that we operate in today. So that is the wider context of our very close collaboration with Tshwane University of Technology, which we are very, very grateful for. There are many things we've done with them. There are many things we will do with them going forward, because they are always welcoming, when we approach them for these kinds of engagements.
Wonderful. I'm going to take snippets from Ntintili and Joe Motsogi. They had an ability. I know one of the first countries was Germany. They had German tourists over in this country, and I think Ntintili ended up was known for speaking German. How important is our ability to connect with people from outside of our country within tourism? Because I think it's an issue that we see, that our ability maybe in society to get along with people from outside can sometimes have glitches, but when it comes to tourism as a business, how important is that? I know you're someone who travels a lot.
Well, Ntintili was actually quite an interesting fellow. He was a multilingualist. He spoke, apparently, I never had the privilege of meeting him in person, but he spoke fluent German, fluent French, fluent Italian. God knows how many other languages the man spoke, and that was a tremendous asset to him, because of course there are two facets, as we know, to tourism. There is domestic tourism, and there's international or inbound tourism, as we call it. And so if you're going to open up the world for inbound tourism to South Africa, that command of of language, and your understanding of the destination, so that you can present it to your visitors, whether they're domestic or international, is very, very important. And Ntintili, you were asking earlier, what it is that made them successful. Well, this was one of his main strengths, that he could, speak so many languages, so he could welcome visitors from, different parts of the country. So I think that, for us, in terms of, the growth of the industry, that is an asset, but also, to the development of new products. I mean, South Africa is such a diverse destination. It's such a rich destination. There are so many things you can showcase about South Africa, all the way from the people, the culture, the food, the music, to the natural beauty of the country, to its economic advancement, industrial advancement. There are so many things. The heritage that we can showcase, and I think that borrowing from what they did in terms of opening up the township spaces as a tourism destination and product, what we hope to learn from them and inspire others is to continue to help South Africa become more competitive by bringing bringing to the market new tourism products. For instance, in our rural spaces, the unfortunate part is that most of tourism in South Africa is still concentrated in certain areas, so that'll be, your Western Cape, and particularly Cape Town, Stellenbosch in that area, the wine routes, Kruger National Park in that area, parts of Johannesburg, especially for business, tourism, KwaZulu-Natal, and the rest of the country is not really as explored as, to the extent that it also, or they also, have, some amazing things to offer. And so I think what still remains for us as the industry in tourism is to really open up all of South Africa, the rest of the provinces, Limpopo, beautiful province, Mpumalanga, you name them, Eastern Cape, where I come from, beautiful, beautiful provinces. And these need to be, all of them, I'm just making these as examples, all of them need to be opened up. And we rely on entrepreneurs. I need to emphasize that. We rely on entrepreneurs, particularly the smaller ones. Why do I say so? Because they are the ones who are located and grounded in communities and understand communities. We cannot rely on large tour operators operating from Cape Town, Johannesburg, you name it, to go and open up the rest of the country. We rely on those entrepreneurs who live in those communities, who understand, the strengths of those communities, who understand what those communities offer, the history, the people, the culture, the heritage, all these things. We rely on them to, apply their creativity to create these new products that we can then package and take, to the rest of the world and also showcase to fellow South Africans.
Right, my last one to you, let's bring it back home. Tell me a little bit about Rendzo and its in the last, let's say more than plus minus 10 years, how it's grown and how it continues to shape the landscape for tourism SMEs. And I read up a story of how some years back when you were at the International Small Business Congress, you were actually the person that got to bid for the first International Small Business Congress to come to South Africa. Give us a little bit of background about Rendzo and the story.
Yes, certainly. So my own personal professional background has been in the public policy space, in the field of entrepreneurship and small business development. So I've worked for over, around 30 years now in that space. So I'm a policy person. And so I did a lot of work in the early days in that space, did a lot of international benchmarking studies, as they call them, on entrepreneurship and small business. And of course, as part of my own learning journey, I attended a lot of conferences, small business conferences, around the world. And the one that really stood out for me was this one called the International Small Business Congress. And the reason it did was because I really found the way it combined public policy together with practice, together with academia. I found it, very fascinating because I had the background of, working at a business school, Wits Business School. So, I spent 3 years of my time at Wits Business School. So there is an academic bent to me. So I had attended this conference in different parts of the world. And in 2010, I had taken a delegation from South Africa. At the time, I was advising an entity that was then called Khula Enterprise Finance Limited, which subsequently became Small Enterprise Finance Limited. They had been tasked at the time, around 2010, by Cabinet to create a 1 billion rand fund to lend directly to small business, because Khula at the time was a wholesale lender, which means it lent its funds through other, retail, what they call retail intermediaries, financial intermediaries. But we were working on a project sanctioned by Cabinet to set up this 1 billion rand fund for direct lending to small business. And so as somebody who had been appointed to advise the CEO and the executives of Khula at the time, I said to them, the first thing that I'd like to do is to take you to different parts of the world, and expose you to what is being done in small business lending. This was particularly for the board and the CEO, the new CEO at the time, because he did not come from the background of small business lending. The other executives did. So one of the places I took them to was Taiwan and Malaysia to go and look at small business funding. And when we got to Taiwan, we found that year they were hosting, towards that year, we were there at the beginning of the year, towards the end of the year, they were hosting the 36th International Small Business Congress. And so through a process of discussion, I then expressed interest to host a future International Small Business Congress in South Africa. And indeed, when I went in November, I presented a proposal to bring the 37th International Small Business Congress to South Africa. It was an interesting experience because I'd never organized a conference in my life. And it was fairly sizable. I mean, we had 744 delegates there from 38 countries. I mean, it was a crazy thing. I mean, our learning was this steep, in organizing that. But it was a fantastic experience. And the reason we did it was we said, we would like to invite our peers from around the world to come and showcase what we're doing in South Africa in terms of entrepreneurship and small business development. Now, I'm telling that story because it speaks directly to the genesis of Rendzo Network. When we started, we were not called Rendzo Network, we were called CZA Network, which stood for C South Africa, a network. But, its genesis goes back to 2012, even though the network itself was started in 2017, right? So it's a young network. But when we were organizing the 37th International Small Business Congress, we found ourselves approached by a whole lot of tourism SMEs, which were saying to us, hey, can you please give us an opportunity as part of this conference? And I'm kind of saying, guys, we're not in tourism. We're just doing this one conference, and it's not even a thing that we intend to repeat. We're just doing this one conference, a once-off thing, and I really don't know what you're talking about. And but then, we found that some of the delegates that were coming to the conference were reaching out to us because we're hosting the conference to say, hey, Septi, I'm coming to South Africa and Africa for the very first time in my life. I want to come with my family. I want to spend a week before or after the Congress. Can you organize something for us? And I was saying, no, guys, listen, we're not in tourism, and I don't know what you're talking about. But then it later dawned on me that, wow, this is actually crazy, isn't it? Here is a person who spent all his career advocating for small business growth and support and development, and market access being an important element of that. And then when I had an opportunity to actually facilitate this market access, I was washing my hands and saying, I will have nothing to do with this. It took me some time, but after a while I thought, no, Because then something else happened. Once we brought that conference and we started working with the convention bureaus, like Johannesburg Tourism Company is called Johannesburg Convention Bureau now, and the National Convention Bureau, we got to know that there are these entities called convention bureaus whose business is to bring business events and sporting events into South Africa. And they approached us and said, hey, we see you hosting this conference. Can we work with you to bring more conferences to South Africa? And to them too, I said, first of all, who are you? And secondly, I'm not in the business of bringing conferences to South Africa. And really, I give credit to them because they held our hand. They said, no, don't worry. Because I was saying to them, listen, I'm a professional researcher, guys. I'm not in tourism and that kind of stuff. I'm a public policy person. And they said, no, we will hold your hand. We will teach you the ropes. We will support you. And the rest, as they say, is history. Because those people walked the journey with us. I'm really, really grateful to them. So as a result of their intervention and their support, we then became an entity that bids for and brings a lot of international conferences to South Africa since when we hosted the first conference in 2012. And so we decided, okay, now we are getting involved in bringing these conferences to South Africa. There's a whole lot of what happens around the hosting of a conference, which many people don't know. And so you need a whole lot of players, to work with you, suppliers, a range of goods and services. And we decided, okay, well, why don't we create a network of SMEs that can supply us with all these things? So it was to be a tight network so that whenever we hosted a conference, we could partner with them. Think about, airport transfers. Think about pre- or post-conference tours. Think about audiovisual. Think about branding. All these things, graphic design, a whole lot of things that goes into organizing a conference. And we came up with a mantra which guides us whenever we organize a conference. If it can be done by an SME, it must be done by an SME. Which means that whenever we organize an event, the team here knows anything that we can get from an SME must be sourced from an SME. The only thing we will not get from an SME is that which we cannot get from an SME. Think, for instance, a venue. If you're hosting a 744 delegate conference, no SME can give that venue, so we use Sentin Convention Center. But if it was a small event where we could go to, an SME-owned venue which was conveniently located, the team knows they would have had to go there. So we created the network to support us in hosting these conferences. That was in 2017, as I said. We launched it in Tshwane in September 2017. The network has since grown. We're no longer called the CZA Network. We're called Rendzo Network. Rendzo is a Chitsonga word for trip, travel, journey. So we felt that it speaks directly to what we do as a network. And now we are also no longer just a network based in South Africa. We're a network that's now got SMEs in about 15 countries.
Wow. Now I think that's an inspiring story for not just tourism, but I think for the heritage of this country. In my parting last question to you, what role does tourism and SMEs in tourism play with the international relations markets?
Well, I think that, tourism is fantastic because to me, tourism is the only industry that really markets South Africa to the rest of the world. And I can talk about my country, until cows come home. I'm so passionate about it. And I think if you're really passionate about talking about South Africa to people, tourism is the space to be. It's very interesting when I travel around and I start talking about my country and people say, oh, Mandela, and it's just fascinating. And we just open up and, when I hear people say good things about my country, especially those who have been here, talk about their positive experiences, about how friendly our people are, how beautiful the country is, and those who have not been, talking about how much they would like to come here. And of course, I invite them and say, you're welcome. SMEs are the backbone of tourism. And this is the thing that we say all the time here. Because I think sometimes, we make a mistake of treating SMEs as if they were secondary to tourism. But SMEs are the backbone of tourism. Why do I say so? for a number of reasons. From the supply perspective. If you want to reach out across the whole country, chances are that in the majority of times, it is SMEs that are going to take you out there and showcase you. Because the big players, the big tour operators, and they play an important role, don't cover the country. But in every part of this country, you find SMEs with local knowledge, with local connections, who understand the local culture, heritage, dynamics, places to see. And they are the ones, who really can help us open up this country to the rest of the world, That is a number one from a supply point of view. And also, from the point of view of them coming up with new products, because a lot of products that we market are really products that are developed by SMEs in townships, in rural areas, and that kind of stuff. And as I say, just by their sheer numerical strength, the number, they give us that possibility to be able to showcase the whole country. But if you just step outside of tourism, per se, and just talk about SMEs also, because of their numerical strength, give us the possibilities to bring young people into the industry, into tourism and into other, sectors of the economy. So a lot of young people start their careers in SMEs, and tourism included. And we talk a lot about, young youth inclusion and that kind of stuff. Well, who are the people who are going to give those young people their very first opportunity of transitioning from an academic institution into industry? It is SMEs, whether it's accommodation establishments where you get to meet with the owner, or tour operators or experience owners, whatever it is that they're doing. It is SMEs that facilitate that transition, which is, by the way, one of the reasons why our network is embarking together with Services SETA on a major program aimed at facilitating that transition by young people from academic institutions to SMEs specifically, because we're a strong believer that if we engage SMEs, and open them up to young people, we will contribute significantly also in terms of dealing with the problem of youth unemployment that we're facing in this country. So I am passionate about SMEs because I know their contribution, not only in tourism, but across the economy, but more so in tourism. When we go overseas and meet with some of the tour operators and some of the travelers who want to come to South Africa, and they get to hear that we're an SME-based network, they get very excited because they say, hey, we'd like to work with SMEs, because, people who travel into the country know that when you support an SME, you're supporting a local community, because the money that SMEs earn, they spend in those local communities when they take people, to different experiences. So we here at Rendzo, of course, we're an SME-based network, but we're very passionate about SMEs because we see the contribution, the mighty contribution that SMEs are making here, which hence the claim we make and make unashamedly that SMEs are actually the mainstay, the backbone of the tourism industry. And not only in South Africa, but in other parts of the world as well.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bukula. My last question to you, I know as a business person who sells countries, where is your favorite place in the world and why?
It shall always remain South Africa. And there's no bias. I really think that we have one of the best countries on earth. I've been privileged to go to many countries, and I take nothing away from them. Each country, offers something unique, special, which is why we travel to go and experience that. But after all of that, I have to say, and I'm not dodging your question.
Yeah, of course.
This country is absolutely the best.
So thank you so much.